the world's poor will be disengaged from the bulk of the world's poor, because the design of it was this Westphalian notion that you target the country, and that's how it works. Okay? Now, of course, there are instrumental reasons for using the nation state, but there are also normative reasons, which is what I find in a lot of the discussion, that when a country crosses the poverty line, somehow the global moral responsibility for the poor in that country diminishes. And that is quite a strong notion, certainly in the polities of northern states. Okay? And the point is that issue, as an issue of thinking, as an issue of ideas, didn't need to arise 30, 40 years ago, but it is now there before us. And very interestingly, there's a very interesting debate in political philosophy between what might be termed the global Rawlsians, who took the Rawlsian paradigm and essentially globalized it and said, therefore, we're all behind the global veil of ignorance, and it's the poorest of the poor who should be the object of policy, no matter where they are. It's the Maximin principle applied to the global setting. Okay? And interestingly, the major critic of the global Rawlsians was Rawls, who argued that you can apply whatever machinery you want, but you cannot apply the Rawlsian machinery to this argument. Why? Because the Rawlsian machinery is based on contractarian theories of justice, which relies upon, the essence of it is that there's a sovereign and subject, and there's a contract between the sovereign and the subject, and essentially what we're doing is fleshing out the contours of that contract. And that's what leads to the Rawlsian discourse. And Rawls says, well, however imperfectly, I can see that in the context of the nation state, the Westphalian nation state, the sovereign, the subject, and so on. But you show me where that compact is in the global context. Okay? So, in fact, there's been this debate between those who've been trying to use Rawls, according to Rawls in a very loose way, to try to get at this breakdown between a person being poor and the person's country being poor. Well, that's where we are. This is how the ideas have needed to evolve as the reality on the ground has changed. And I don't think we have a resolution to that. There's a big debate between the Rawls on the one hand and global Rawlsians on the other. Well, there you are. That's an example, I think, of how the Westphalian paradigm, which has structured so much of our thinking, now needs to be rethought. Thank you very much.
And so, to Michael, if you'd like to discuss.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you for this opportunity to comment on this volume. I'm not going to talk about the economics or indeed the ergonomics of a 1,000-page volume, but I am going to sort of take on this idea of what this book is not about, since when you publish a book with 52 chapters, what's interesting to me almost is what's not in there as opposed to what is in there. What is in there is a wonderful list of topics that would be familiar, I assume, to pretty much everybody in this room. All of the big questions sectorally, all the big questions country-wise in terms of strategies that these countries have followed, etc. And my full-time job is with the research department of the World Bank, but for 9 of the last 14 years, I've also had the great opportunity, and I've been authorized by a succession of directors of the research group at the World Bank to teach at the Harvard Kennedy School. Indeed, our other discussant is a former student of mine. So among the many upsides of simultaneously trying to apply what I teach 4 days a week and then I'll try and actually make it stick on Fridays, is that you get to hang out with the cool kids. You get to hang out with the leading generation of people that are going to be the future for taking this whole business forward. And what struck me upon looking at the table of contents of this book was, in one sense, what the rising generation seems to think is what is all interesting and cool about the development problem, and by extension, what we should do in response to that, seems very different. Right? So in one sense, I think this book is a landmark volume in the sense of providing a way of a representational summary of how the prevailing intelligentsia thinks about development at the moment. But I've always been concerned in some sense that when you talk to our own students today about their own backgrounds, what they aspire to, and when you give them a license to set up a conference on development entirely where they get to choose the content, the speakers, the whole bit, they don't set up conferences like this. All right? They don't talk about, unfortunately, they don't talk about, actually, a lot of the stuff that this book talks about. Right? They don't talk about energy strategies. They talk about kicking soccer balls around in the villages of Kenya that are able to generate electricity at nighttime so they can set up little candles. They don't talk about agriculture. They talk about very specific targeted programs to work with poor people. They don't talk about infrastructure. They don't talk about public financial management. And it really bothers me that they don't. So I think, so when I look at this book, I'm really, I think it's an important statement about how, in fact, we should be thinking about development in a very in a way that is consistent with how countries in the post-colonial moment envisioned what they thought development was about. And I think it's very telling that in the 21st century, when we look at a new generation imagining and discussing and implementing this thing called development, it actually feels, to me at least, rather different from how that has been done in the past. So I think we're at a very, the juncture is critical for me, because I think we don't want to be seen as the curmudgeonly old school kind of fuddy-duddies that sort of haven't got with the program and haven't figured out how to create new apps for development and haven't sort of got with the program with regards to cutting edge evaluation techniques and all that sort of stuff. And yet, to me, it is almost an existential kind of challenge that if we lose the sense of the historical context and deep politics that created the aid architecture in which we live, if we don't have the capacity to help our students think through the kinds of philosophical issues that Ravi just articulated, if we don't have a sense that countries like Iran back in 1962 were the jewel in the crown and kind of now they're not, right? And when the epicenter of our thinking starts going towards these very micro-targeted, cool interventions, I think we've lost a lot, actually, about what this business that we're in is actually all about. So I love this volume just because it really tries to lay down, I think, a really comprehensive statement about what big development questions are about. It's about agriculture, it's about infrastructure, it's about jobs in a big sense of what